Yeah, good evening. Adeshin Adewale. You are the first today. Thank you very much for joining. Good evening. You're welcome. We're actually going to be handling the question you asked today. You asked about costing and pricing. So I'm starting a series on export costing and pricing this evening because of your request. I'm hoping that probably this will take another maybe 3 to 5 parts from us. So at the end of the day, I'm hoping that we will have been able to have some value to your business. At least you make it easier for you to be able to, first of all, cost and then price appropriately your product for export in Nigeria. This is Import-Export Platform brought to you by 3Timpest Trade Academy. This is a program that educates listeners in various areas of international trade, and we also tend to provide solutions to the challenges that international trade people, both on the import and export, are facing in Nigeria. My name is Dele Ayemibo, and we'll be starting a fresh series today. And the series we are starting today is export costing and pricing. Export costing and pricing. Sorry if the video is shaking. I'm actually on the road. In the morning I was on the road, in the evening I'm on the road. But since we promised to do 6 p.m. and 8 a.m. wherever the 6 a.m. or 8 a.m. meets me, then I'll start the Facebook Live from there. Since, it's technology, you can always connect from anywhere. So we're looking at export costing and pricing. And today we'll be looking at part 1, basically introduction. Like I said in some of the previous edition, that when people ask me questions, if they ask me if I receive 10 calls in a day on export inquiries, at least 5 will be on getting buyers, about 2 to 3 will be on pricing, and the rest will be on different other inquiries. So pricing also is very important, as well as, of course, getting buyers, contract, very important. And that's why we are considering this, export costing and pricing. Pricing basically talks about you being able to give a price that is competitive enough. And if it's not competitive, being able to also manage your pricing. Being able to also manage your pricing also become very, very important and very crucial in your journey of export business. Pricing is undoubtedly one of the difficult factors to determine international trade. One of the very difficult factors to determine. Why people call us to ask for pricing is because they are not able to determine the price. Because for you to be able to determine the price, then you must have been able to see from end to end. Some people make some mistakes. Someone will say, the price of so and so product is so and so online, and because someone a website is quoting an indicative price, and he's going to think he can just quote that price also, not thinking that, look, that price you are seeing is indicative. It has up and down. That means some will have to quote a little bit higher, some a little bit lower, depending on where you are. And sometimes you might not be able to quote that price. Let me give you an example. Let's assume someone give a price for a particular product, let's say a commodity. You are doing cocoa, and they gave you a price. With the way we are having delays at the port, with the increase in the cost of truck in Lagos, with the increase in the fact that people will have to use barge on the waters, and that has increased their cost, will you be able to quote the price you see on this day? Business day rather. Business day have a price on cocoa every day. Do you think you can just quote that price? You can't just quote that price. You must have an idea of the cost you are going to incur. Those prices are indicative pricing. It gives you an idea of where your price should be, and to let you know if your price will be profitable. If it's too high, of course, you know that nobody will look at you. Everybody will see your product prices has been not been realistic, and then they won't be able to consider buying from you. So pricing is very important. It's a difficult factor to determine, and that's why we're actually having this session discussing pricing. A difficult factor to determine, because for you to determine price, you don't need to just know the price of the goods. You need to know the price of transportation. You need to know the price of labor. You need to know the price of packaging. You need to know the price of moving the goods. You need to know about the product alone, there are many prices you need to know. Talk less of other things you need to do when you now have the product. So all this contributes significantly to the challenges of being able to determine pricing. So what we'll be doing is basically to give you an insight into how that can be done, how that is possible in this session. Unlike local trade, a lot of factors need to be put into consideration when you are selling any product or commodity in the export market. When you are selling any product or commodity in the export market, a lot of factors need to be put into place. The factor you probably will not have considered if you are selling locally. You begin to put that into consideration when you are selling internationally. Why? They affect your price. They affect your price. Let me give you an example. We currently are selling pap in the UK, like I often say. The price we are selling it in the UK, we can't sell it in West Africa, even though we are looking for market in West Africa. But we can't attempt to sell it in West Africa. Why? If we attempt to sell it in West Africa, we cannot be competitive. Because in the UK, it's sold for about £4. We expect at about £2, £1.70. I'm not sure we can even expect at £1.70 to Ghana. UK can afford it because they are high income economy. West Africa cannot afford it because they are low income economy. Now, you can see how the income being earned by the market, how it affects how you can price your goods. So you really cannot price arbitrarily. You cannot price arbitrarily. You must be able to find a way around pricing such that at the end of the day you'll be profitable. That means if your pricing is too high, you're better off leaving that market. You're better off leaving that market. That, like I said, we have tried West African market. We've not been able to conquer the market. We're still trying, mainly because, so if we are shipping by sea to the West African market, we'll be able to achieve that. And gracefully, Nexim Bank, I heard, is already working towards a sea link that will enable Nigerian to ship within the West African region. For me, that would be a big relief. I didn't know why it took Nigeria decades to be able to fix this. I'm still wondering why. I believe maybe there are other issues I don't know. But if it's to be able to secure vessel, finance a vessel, register it across the zone, and be able to move from one port to the other, I don't know if there are other issues I don't know. But if that's what is involved, I still don't fathom why that become a problem. But good enough, Nexim is fixing that now. I understand before the end of the year, we should have a vessel within the West African region. Do you know that if I want to ship my goods to Ghana, the vessel that leave Nigeria will first of all go to Europe before coming to Ghana? Because there are very few items leaving Nigeria to Ghana by sea. So they can't carry only my container to go and drop in Ghana. They rather go to Europe, from Europe load container coming to West Africa and then drop it in Ghana. So I might spend about 4 weeks. Whereas if a vessel is going, the vessel will spend less than 1 week to get to Ghana. But they will spend about 4 or 5 weeks, or probably even 6 weeks. About 6 weeks actually. Because to get to Europe, you need about 2 to 3 weeks. To load, about 1 week. To come by, about 2 to 3 weeks. So you're practically spending at least 4 to 6 weeks. Now, what are we saying exactly? The fact that pricing have a lot of intricacies. Even government policy can affect your pricing. I've just given an example now. The fact that we are not able to get a vessel within West Africa is a major challenge. And do you know what? This is one thing Chinese don't joke with. Chinese want to lift their people out of poverty. They've lifted over 400 million people, and they're still doing a lot to lift them out of poverty. So they don't just produce, they create infrastructure to sell the goods. They create infrastructure to sell the goods. So a Chinese government will build rail crossing 7 countries all the way from UK down to China. They want to sell. If they have to ship by sea, is spend longer time. They spend longer time shipping by sea. Because they spend longer time shipping by sea, they now want to move. Within 2 weeks, this train will be in Europe from China. Within 2 weeks, the train is back. Is it not interesting? Christopher Ebhohihem. Sorry, I hope I didn't mutilate your name. So sorry about that. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining. Good evening. So it's interesting to know that China will not just export, they will build the road. They are building the Silk Road now, which is an old road they are rehabilitating to be able to ship within that region. Is it not interesting? Do you know what they are trying to do? They want to reduce the cost of shipment for their people so that they can be more competitive. Period. They are reducing the cost of shipment for their people in order for them to be more competitive. That is all that China is trying to do. That is all that China is trying to do. Reduce as much as possible the transit time for their people. Reduce as much as possible the transit time for their people so that they will be able. Sorry about that. Like I said, I'm in transit, so the car is moving and the phone is shaking. So sorry about that. Hello, Bolu. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining. Welcome. So imagine China building a road within the Asian region, building rail to Europe. Recently, they launched the longest bridge on ocean in the world, linking China with Hong Kong, reducing transit time, I think, for about 3-4 hours to just less than 1 hour. Sometimes when you see some of the things these people are doing, it's easy to know those are serious. They just want to ensure, look at what China is trying to do. China has a huge population, a number of them in poverty. Now, they know that no nation grows its economy to desired size by trading with itself. For you to grow your economy to an enviable level, you must trade with other parts of the world. So what China is basically doing is this. As long as the factories are producing, jobs are being created. Now, if the factory are producing and they are not able to ship, or there is no market, it becomes very difficult for the factory to survive. When the factory closed down, jobs are lost. And China shipped to almost every. In fact, China must not go on recession. China go on recession, a lot of countries will be affected. Just the way America had its own recession and they call it global economy meltdown. Just because one country have issues. Why? Because a lot of countries depend on America for survival. Currently, a lot of countries depend on China for survival. Now, what's leading us to this conversation? How China have made its own pricing of its product very cheap. Someone was just joking recently and said, to ship from Nigeria to China, to ship goods from Nigeria to China is cheaper than shipping the same goods from Kano to Lagos. There are ports in China I will ship to at $400. Do you know what $400 is? That's about $144,000. $400 at 360. That's about $144,000. $400. Even to ship within Lagos, I can't even ship within Lagos at $400. Within Lagos, trucks today are over 3, 4, 500,000, depending on the kind of container and the distance within Lagos. But to ship to China is $400. But to ship to Kano to Lagos is more than is almost $2,000, if not $2,000. Over $600,000, $500,000, $600,000. These are the issues with pricing. Dimeji Bakari, thank you very much for joining. Good evening and welcome. By the way, for those that are just joining us, we are discussing we finished export financing, A to Z of export financing 1 to 20. You can pick them up on our timeline. You can check it on our Facebook page. You can check it on my channel on YouTube, and of course, you can check it on SoundCloud. but we started export costing and pricing. Export costing and pricing. And I was trying to explain the things that China has done to be able to significantly reduce the price. And say, Chinese goods are very cheap. It's not just cheap labor. Not because of our population. They also build infrastructure to make it cheaper for them to sell goods to you. And I was giving an example of the rail between China and Europe. Example of the road between China and other countries in Europe. Between China and other countries in Asia and Europe. And the sea, bridge over sea that was recently launched between China and Hong Kong. All in the bid to ensure the good gets to the market on time, the good get to the market cheaper, and make them more competitive. So we're discussing pricing and the fact that a lot of factors need to be put into consideration when you are considering pricing of your product. New entrants in export business have serious difficulty in setting appropriate prices because of inadequate information on all the cost elements that are often incurred in export pricing. They find it very difficult in being able to cost their export. And that's why we are having this session. So that people can now begin to appropriately cost their export. Appropriately cost their export. So that you can now set a good price. And we're going to do some practical demonstration in the course of this conversation. Onome Joy, thank you very much for joining. Enoch Eju Colem, thank you very much for joining. Good evening and welcome. Many new entrants find difficult in setting pricing because of inadequate information on the cost element. So if you are new in export business, you really need to know the cost element. For example, if I need to sell anything, of course I know all my costs, put my markup, and then eventually I'm able to determine my price, at least the basic price. Even though we are not factor other things. There are other things we don't factor into pricing. But at least you have an idea of the basic price you are incurring for the transaction. Now, in principle, three basic factors determine the limit of product pricing in a country. Number one, the cost. This may generate loss if you go below that price. Number two, the lowest price. That is the point where you begin to make profit. Number three, the highest price. That is what is set by competition. So you have the cost price, minimum price. You have the lowest price from which you generate profit. And the highest price, which is often set by competition. Your competition in the country determines how far you can go with pricing. Companies often have pricing policies based on certain goals. However, company decision with regard to pricing level should support, number one, a profit on investment made. Number two, a winning position in the market. But more importantly, number three, coping with competition. It's very important you set the price that help you to be able to cope with competition. But there are three factors you must consider when you are thinking of export pricing. Three major factors. Number one, cost. Number two, demand. Number three, competition. These are factors that affect pricing. Number one, cost. Number two, demand. If the demand is low, you can't have a good price. If the demand is low, you cannot have a good price. If your cost is too high, that becomes a challenge also for you. Another very critical factor is competition. Let me give you an example of competition recently. Plantain chips is a cash cow in the UK, in Europe generally. Plantain chips. Cash cows, and people are exporting it seriously. I know a company that exports plantain chips to the UK, 4 containers every month. And it's Nigerian. He imports the plantain chips from Costa Rica to UK, 4 containers every month, 40-foot containers every month. He brings it in from Costa Rica. a Nigerian. He actually tried to do it from his state, in Ondo State. The governor in Ondo State, and this was more than 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the governor then was not serious. He wanted to, is it kickback? I don't know what he was asking the guy, and the guy just said, the guy does not live in Nigeria. He just wanted to do the business in the UK and looking to site the factories to produce the plantain chips, where to look out for it, and the governor was not serious. So he decided to go to Costa Rica. In Costa Rica, he got a company that even ready to produce for him. So he was buying the plantain there, producing it there, and shipping it to the UK. Now, the plantain chips, the weight, I think it's about 60 grams or something. But where I'm going is this. Someone is producing about 100 grams of plantain chips in Nigeria. Well-packaged plantain chips. But the price is as high as 250 naira. 250 naira. Can you guess the price of plantain chips in the UK? The price of plantain chips in the UK is about 70p. 70p, that's 0.5 pounds. 0.7 pounds. Now, if the price of plantain chips in the UK is 0.7 pounds, let's do the math. At an exchange rate of 450, 0.5 pounds will be about 225. So 0.6 pounds, 7 pounds will not be about more than maybe about 150 naira. So that means these plantain chips in the UK, the price on the street is just about 150 naira. It's just about 260 naira. Because a pound is about, let's assume, okay, for ease of calculation, let's assume a price of pounds of 500 naira. It's a price of 500 naira. So if 500 naira to 1 pound, that means 50 pounds. 10 pounds will be about 50 naira. So 50 pounds will be about 250. 60 pounds will be about 300 naira. So 60p rather will be about 300 naira. 60p, 300 naira. Now, if 60p, which is 0.6 pounds, is 300 naira, that means that's the price they will buy it on the street in the UK. But when you are exporting, you need to understand the fact that, okay, let me give you a good example. The pap we export is sold for 4 pounds. We are exporting it at about 2 pounds. That clearly tells you, any price you see as retail price in the UK, you cannot sell it more than half of that as export price. Your export price, CFR price, cannot be more than half of that. That means if you are going to export these plantain chips, it cannot be more than 150 naira export price equivalent. It cannot be more than 150 naira export price equivalent. Do you know what that means? This our guy in Nigeria, his product is 250 naira. Well packed. I'm dying to sell that product. I'm dying to sell it. I love it. I want to sell it. But you know what? The competition has limit how much we can price that product. The competition has limit how much you can price that product. Tunji Afunwakwe, thank you very much for joining. Olaleko Kasim, thank you very much for joining. Good evening and welcome. We are discussing, you are welcome to Import-Export Platform, Facebook Live from 3Thinkpes Trade Academy. And what we are discussing today is export costing and pricing. We have been discussing for almost 2 weeks A to Z of export business financing, and we have it from part 1 to part 20. So you can check my timeline for you to be able to pick up that video, A to Z of export business financing. But we stopped that this morning because we already finished part 20, and this evening we are starting a new series that might probably make up to 10 parts, a new series, and this series is called Export Costing and Pricing. Export Costing and Pricing. And I was just talking about the challenge of competition, that you cannot just sit down and fix an arbitrary price, and that there was a plantain chip that was well packaged. It was lovely. If I was being in the office, I would have shown you the picture. Lovely plantain chips. I love it. I'm dying to sell it. I'm dying to export it. It's going to sell, no doubt. But the pricing is not right. The pricing is not right. The competition already set the price at 60p, 0.6 pounds. Someone is saying, do you have all this in a book? You can pick up the book. You can pick up the book. Export Business Made Easy is 7,500. Export Business Made Easy is one of the most practical export books you will find in Nigeria. It's on Jumia, right? One of the most practical export books you'll find in Nigeria. We can deliver it to you. It's 6,000 on Jumia, 7,500 if you are sending it to you. So you can pick it up on Jumia, 6,500. So all that I'm talking to you today about pricing, you'll find it there. You'll find it there. That's Export Business Made Easy. It's the green book. Export Business Made Easy. Export Business Made Easy. You can drop the link, right? My colleague will drop the link shortly so you can see the link. That's Enoch. Thank you very much for the question, Enoch. Now, I was talking about the fact that pricing is extremely critical. And I was giving an example of pricing of plantain chips of Nigeria. And I was trying to analyze that plantain chips cost 250 locally. That means if I'm going to buy that plantain chip to export it, I will still put my markup at 250. Maybe I put a markup at 300. That means when they want to sell that thing, remember anything you are exporting, especially to Europe, always mark it up by 50%, 50%, 50%. Any price you see in the market, divide it by 50% to determine your price locally. So if you are going and you saw a product on the shelf in the UK and you want to sell it and you want to export it from Nigeria, just divide the price. If the product is £5, know that you cannot sell it more than 2.5 pounds. CFR price, CFR. I'll be talking about CFR price later on. There is FOB price, there is CFR price, there is CIF price, there is different kind of pricing. We'll be discussing all that extensively in this series. But today we're just looking at introduction. And all we have done so far is talking about how cost, demand, and pricing all drive your cost. So your pricing. And the fact that you must have a good understanding of all the cost elements for you to be able to set an appropriate price. And if you don't have a good idea of the cost element, it will make it difficult for you to to set an appropriate price. It is extremely, extremely important. Extremely, extremely important for you to be able to set appropriate price. But remember, that price can only be set through that price can only be set by putting into consideration your costing, the demands, and the competition. If the demand for the product is high, the price will be high. But whatever the price is, competition give the ceiling. The ceiling, the maximum you can go is set by competition. And you know that this is international trade, right? There are other countries that are more efficient in production than us. Very, very efficient. So if we are not efficient in our production, that will be a challenge for us in export. That is why you can only export what you are sourcing raw material for in Nigeria. If you want to export any item that you want to export, that the Europeans have the raw materials in their soil, they don't have to import it. You can't compete with them. But if they have to import it, then you are better off. For shea butter, for example, there's no reason why we should not be able to produce fantastic shea butter in Nigeria, or shea cream, or shea soap. Why? Because those raw materials are available locally and there are demand for them out there. So any product that you have to import the raw material and you want to now produce locally and export, it might be a bit challenging for you to be priced to be profitable. Because Chinese will give better pricing. Asian will give better pricing. I was on the phone. I hope you have sent it.
I can see you online.
Chinese, you have better pricing. Asian, better pricing. It's extremely important. It's extremely important that we understand the basic of pricing. Now, when you look at costing in export business, costing become extremely, extremely important. Now, costing goes beyond just looking at the product price, because what some people only look at is product price. If the only thing you look at is product price, you are going to find it very difficult to be able to price your product effectively. Because beyond the product price, there are many other factors that you want to look at, you want to consider. Many other factors beyond the product price. Beyond the product price. You want to consider the transportation. And I was giving an example of the issue of transportation before some of us came up. That transportation today has been a big problem. Why? In Nigeria, transportation from Kano to Lagos, if we are going to sell the same product with China in the UK, we cannot compete. Because the cost of moving that good to the UK for Chinese is a lot cheaper than the cost Nigerian is going to move that product to the UK. Especially if that product is sourced from outside Lagos and you have to now bring it to Lagos and eventually begin to consider moving it to the UK. Why? Because of the price. Our pricing are because our cost of our transport, the cost of transport is making not go okay for us. So now, what I'm basically explaining now is that a lot of factors must be put in place if you are going to consider product for export. And apart from the cost, because at the end of the day, when you have seen all these costs, you will now find out that at the end of the day, what will finally determine if you will be profitable is not going to be competition. So tomorrow we are going to continue this conversation. We are going to move on to the part 2 of export pricing, and I'll be looking at other very critical factors that are very important in you being able to export effectively. In able to price your product right and be able to beat the competition in the export market. Thank you very much for listening to us again today. My name remains Dele Ayemibo, and this is the Import-Export platform brought to you by 3T Import Trade Academy. See you tomorrow morning again by 8 a.m. Bye for now.